my name is Richie. I hope you are having a fabulous day, and today I'm going to be talking about my NaNoWriMo experience. I finally learned how to say the word. If you've noticed in my past few videos, I've been calling it NaNoWriMo. National Novel Reading Month? I don't know. It's because I had never participated in NaNoWriMo before that I didn't know how to pronounce NaNoWriMo. I've gotten better throughout the course of the month. It's December now. NaNoWriMo is over. This was my first year participating, and I have a couple of videos about my intentions on participating and my first week's wrap-up. I planned on doing vlogs for every week, and I only ended up vlogging the first week. After that first week, I did try to vlog a couple of times, but I just wasn't getting in the writing as well as I had been. And so as I slacked on writing, I slacked on vlogging, and it just kind of happened and snowballed hand in hand. That being said, I did win NaNoWriMo, which is mind-boggling that I wrote 50,000 words in 1 month, especially since I didn't write for 2 weeks. That last week, there were a lot of days where I wrote like 5,000 words a day. But basically, I was writing every day. I was on track, writing the intended amount or even above it every single day. And then the election happened, and I haven't really talked about it on my channel, but it was a very hard and emotional and draining time for me personally and for a lot of people. I know I am in no means alone in that. And honestly, I didn't write a single word for probably 4 days. And then I wrote like 50 words, and then I wrote a couple hundred, and I slowly got it back into the process. And I slowly got strength because creating something so healing, and even if it wasn't talking about what was happening, it was so incredibly helpful. But it took me a long time to get back into that mindset and figure out how to write again after things just kind of shattered around me. I live in Ohio. I'm not from Ohio, but I live in Ohio. Ohio is a swing state. I was very excited for the first time for my vote to count, to matter. Your vote always matters, but because of our weird electoral college system, my vote back home in California counted a heck of a lot less than my vote here in Ohio does. So to see the state I live in not go the way I intended or wanted was hard. But I get it. The world is the world, and people have their own opinions. But it was extremely scary to go to work the next day. I didn't leave my place of work because I didn't want to step outside. I was scared. I feel better, but I still feel uneasy in my state. If you don't know, Ohio State recently had a violent act. We at first thought it was a shooting. It wasn't a shooting, but it was a guy with a big knife. And he went around and started stabbing people on the campus. And it was this big, scary thing to go through, knowing my best friend and her husband were at campus. And Manny hadn't gone into campus, but he was on his way there. And that happened during NaNoWriMo as well. And so there's just so many painful and hard things going on during the month. And that's not really an excuse as to why I stopped writing and vlogging, but it is an explanation, is that things were hard. I got very far behind. If you look at my writing progression, and I'll put a screenshot of it here, there were like 4 or 5 days where I wouldn't write anything, and then another like 4 or 5 days where I wouldn't write anything. And so for almost 2 weeks of the month, I'd say probably at least a week and a half of the month, I didn't write a single word, and that adds up quickly. There was a certain point where I was more behind than words I had written. And that last week and a half, I really kicked it into gear because even though the month had not turned out how I wanted it to and things were kind of just hard in general, I wanted to write. And it was such a cathartic and helpful process, even though my story has nothing to do with politics. It just made me feel empowered to create something, even if it was not anything good, because guys, by no means is this story good. It's awful. It's horrible. This is the first book I've ever written, and you can tell. But I wrote it, and it's actually not quite finished yet. I'm not done. 50,000 words wasn't enough. But after completing the 50,000 words, I was like, I'm taking a break. And I think in the next few days, I'm going to pick it up and finish that out before we get to my birthday, which is halfway through December. That's my goal, is to finish the first draft by my birthday and just like kind of go at a super leisurely pace to get there. Not really stress about it, not have word count goals, but just the goal in general to be finished by my birthday. I learned a lot of things about myself during this process, including what kind of writer I am. I'm kind of a plantster, but if I had to identify as a pantser or a planner, I would say I'm a planner. I would say I need a rough outline and a direction and scenes that I want to write. Otherwise, things will fall apart. The way I got to 50,000 words is that I knew certain scenes I wanted to write, and they weren't necessarily in chronological order. I would jump from chapter 1 to chapter 6 and do this scene and then that scene, and it was not necessarily chronological, and it was a little bit messy, but it worked for me. So times I was stuck, I would just hop to a new scene and I would still get words down, and that was super helpful. And I couldn't have done that or kept that straight without some kind of rough structure. The pantser part of that does play in because there are so many scenes that would come in the middle, and I would just be like, oh, that would work because of this, or this only works because of that. And as the story starts being written, certain pieces weave in and make more sense and kind of form an actual story and not just scenes. It kind of all started to come together. I never actually got writer's block in terms of I didn't know what to write, which I think is super great and says something about my excitement for my project. I did get writer's block in terms of I couldn't write because of myself and the world, and I just didn't want to sit down and stare at a screen and write because I was feeling intense emotions, as I've discussed in this video already. But in terms of like not knowing what to write, I didn't have writer's block the entire month, which is such an amazing feeling. I've also learned that I have a huge support system. My best friend and writing buddy was there constantly for me, sitting down, writing with me. She did not win NaNoWriMo, but I honestly could not have won without her. Last night, I was like probably 5,000 words to the finish line, and I just couldn't write anymore. It's like, I am so frustrated. I cannot do this. And she was like, you're insane. If you stop now, so close. Why would you do that? And I honestly couldn't have gotten there without her. But not just in that last day. Throughout the month, we were constantly talking to each other about our stories and our process. Her husband was also a huge support system. He would sit in the living room while we were writing and do things and like just be doing his own thing, and then randomly like pull out his phone and play like Eye of the Tiger or super inspiring, exciting, like the finish line is in sight kind of music. It was super sweet. He did that throughout the month. He was just very cheerful and energetic and being like, you guys can do it. Go team, go. I also, after I finished, had a lot of people tell me they wanted to read my story. And while I explained to all of them that one, the story is not finished, and two, it is in no way ready to be read by anyone ever. Possibly ever, but at least right now, not by anyone at all. There are story plots that just kind of like fell off halfway through the story that I just don't continue on with. It's not done yet. It's not ready for that. And I explained that to so many people, but it was such a great feeling to be like, hey, I did this thing that's really weird and kind of awesome, and I feel great about it, even though it's not great. And to have so many people come back to me and being like, oh, I want to read that. That's such a really cool and exciting and fulfilling feeling. It's just, I can't express it. It's really cool. So what happens next?
What comes next? You've been freed.
What comes next is finish the draft. As I mentioned, my goal is to at least finish what I've started. And then comes revisions. And I do plan on revising this book. When I finished, I was like, I'm going to scrap everything. I'm going to finish because I'm so close to 50,000, but I'm just going to delete this entire story. It's so bad. I think that's a standard thing, I believe, because now that I've sat on that, I don't want to delete the whole thing. And I do plan on taking a lot of those plot points that kind of fell off in the middle of the story and just scrapping a lot of them because they don't fit anymore. I plan on rearranging a lot of components and maybe even rewriting most of the book, in fact. I plan on going through the draft and doing just like a copy edit, going through the draft another day and just doing like a sensory edit. Like there are a lot of times where the characters don't explain like, oh, that looks like that smells like that, anything like that. I was so focused on plot, point, get here, get there, get words out, get the story moving, that I didn't focus on a lot of the details that need to be there. My characters do eat though, but they don't go to the restroom. So, I mean, they do the shower. I don't know, there's just a lot of things that need to be fixed. They don't smell anything. I don't think they've ever smelled anything in the entire book. That's something. So I have a lot of little edits, and I just kind of want to go through the entire draft once and find this thing and focus on that thing and continue to meld the world and flesh out things and figure it out, and it's going to be a long process. But I'm hoping to be done with revisions by February. January, February, revise it and see how I feel about it. And that way I can, in March, draft and outline my story idea for Camp NaNoWriMo, which is, I think, in April. And that gives me a month to either decide if I'm going to start a new project or basically rewrite this one, because January and February are going to be revisions for me. And if the revisions don't pan out how I want to and I still want to work on this project, then what I plan to do in Camp NaNoWriMo is to use the 50,000 words, or it'll probably be 60 or 70,000 words by the time this draft is done, of this book, and kind of just rewrite it, use this idea, and just try again. So I'm not sure exactly what happens next, other than I keep going, I keep trying, and I aim for doing this again in April for Camp NaNoWriMo. I'm sorry I didn't keep up with the vlogs. I know a lot of you really enjoyed them. I didn't have it in me to continue. I hope you understand that. I want to hear about your NaNoWriMo experience, so either tell me all about it in the comments down below, or just tell me you have a video on your channel and I'll go find it and watch it. If you have a video on NaNoWriMo and I watch your videos regularly, know that I am so incredibly behind on watching videos. I probably will be watching it soon. You can still remind me you have one in the comments down below, but know that I'm super behind, like a month behind on videos. Like, I basically didn't watch videos during NaNoWriMo. So I'm super behind. I will get to them, I promise, because I really want to see them. Anyways, that is all for today's video. If you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed NaNoWriMo, and if you enjoy teleporters, which are kind of what my story is about, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!
Have yourself a merry little Christmas.